Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ dhammāṃ saṅghāṃ namasami. About 2 or 3 months ago, I started giving a series of talks, just because one evening I decided to give a talk on right view, which is the first factor of the Eightfold Path, or in those people who know this, that is the first factor of the Tenfold Path, where the 8 factors are complemented by the 9th and 10th factor of right release, samma vimutti, and the last one, samma vimuttiyana, which is the right knowledge of freedom or release. And just one thing led to another, and I just started this whole series of talks. And tonight we come to the 10th factor, samma vimuttiyana. Last week I talked about samma vimutti. It was after a very busy day, so I was a bit tired. I think I made the points, but maybe they were not as systematic as usual because of tiredness. But today we come to the last factor, the samma vimuttiyana, the knowledge of liberation, of perfect liberation. Now I know there's some people coming here, maybe this may be an esoteric, a very deep talk on Buddhism, but nevertheless, I think you may be able to get some of the feel of this goal of this whole practice. And everybody knows that the idea is to get some enlightenment, the freeing from samsara. I think even last week I started to explain some deeper meaning about that term, samsara. Samsara is literally the perpetual wandering. And it's interesting when you've been a monk for so long and you learn these words, in the original Pali, and not just learn them, but you get sort of an inner feeling of what they are. This is the language which you live by. Having been a monk for over 30 years now, you get a real understanding of what these words mean. And this whole idea of like samsara, this perpetual wandering, you can understand that in your daily life. It's always going somewhere, always trying to get something, always one more thing to do, another place to visit, another project to complete, another thing in front of you to do. And the whole idea of the mind just perpetually wandering from one thought to another, from one place to another, from one project to another, from one responsibility to another, just work after work after work. It's like an endless journey which never stops. It's like this wheel. I remember in Europe in the Middle Ages, they used to make prisoners do work by going on this treadmill, this huge wheel. And they used to call it like the hill without a summit. And these convicts would actually be in this wheel, and they're always having to walk upwards, upwards, upwards. And that way they turn this wheel. And I think it was used to mill flour or something or other. But it was like human energy to try and get this huge wheel moving. And sometimes that's what our life feels like, which is why we call it, we're on the treadmill. Always doing things, but nothing is ever completed or finished. It's the same with people who do studies. There's always another exam, another qualification. No matter what you have in life, there's always something to add to the house you've already got. There's always a new shelf to put into any sort of hut or office or whatever. It's never ending. And that's why it's called samsara, the perpetual wandering. And the goal of Buddhism is actually put an end to that perpetual wandering. To actually end samsara, to get off that wheel. And if you can imagine, just like being a convict in one of those treadmills, always having to walk upwards, always walking upwards without any rest, you get an understanding of what the Buddha saw and what he meant as this suffering. even though that sometimes you can just go to your room and you can relax, it's only at most the body relaxing, but the mind is always active, always wanting something more. And even if you can relax, it's only just like a tea break on the wheel of samsara. You still have to keep going afterwards, and there seems to be no end to this. And that was one of the realizations of the Buddha before he came enlightened, just how endless this whole thing is. Once a person can actually penetrate and understand the truth of rebirth, that it isn't just one life but many lives, that's a fact which people can prove for themselves if they want to do the experiments of deep meditation. But once one understands and accepts that, one can see the main problem is that you're trying to stop. Which is why that this whole process which we have in a monastery such as this, of renunciation, is all about stopping, learning how to stop doing things, to stop moving, to stop coming and going. Soon we have our rains retreat when we're supposed to stop coming and going, stop making telephone calls, stop writing letters, just stop coming and going and doing things. In the rains retreat, the best project of all for you to do is the project of no projects, to do absolutely nothing, to get nowhere, to achieve nothing, just to be, to stop all this doing and getting and controlling and making, and stop all this changing the world to suit yourself, and just be, stopping. This whole idea of stopping is an incredibly powerful word which I've been using recently in my own meditation and talking to other people. It's just one of these beautiful, skillful means. You stop the body by sitting still. You stop all your projects by coming into the moment. You stop the mind thinking by being silent. Nothing moves anymore. And when you stop, soon the body stops and you just get outside the body, or rather inside into the mind. And you stop the mind as well. Nothing moves, nothing is happening. And it gives you like the taste of freedom. It gives you the understanding of what this freedom truly is. And this is an important part of Vimutiyana, the knowledge of freedom. And I'm going to explain it in this way. First of all, it's the first understanding of what freedom truly means. Because sometimes that people in the world, they want to sort of look for this freedom, they aspire for freedom, they work hard for freedom, but do they ever really know what freedom is? Okay, so they can do whatever they want, but they're still in the power, of their fears, their worries, their grief. They're still controlled by that. That lay story, that story about those two prisoners of war who had been in a POW camp under the Japanese. And they were so tortured, they were starved, beaten, so many of their friends died. And one said to the other, "So do you still hate those prison guards who did all that to you and your mates?" And he said, "Oh yeah, mate, I could never forgive them. I hate those Japanese. What about you?" And he replied, "I forgave them a long time ago. I don't hate them at all anymore. That's why I've left the prisoner of war camp. You are still in there." And it's true, as long as we carry around the past, worry about it, have this anxiety, this grief, this anger, this whatever, this guilt, then we are prisoners of the past. And that's no freedom anymore. So many people just still are imprisoned by the past. Other people are imprisoned by the future, worrying and concerned about what might happen next, worried about their death, their sickness, what might happen tomorrow, next week, worried about, have you got enough cars to take the people in tomorrow? I know sometimes that I'm supposed to worry, I'm supposed to be the abbot, but the longer I become, the longer I'm in this role, the more irresponsible I become. Just don't worry about things. It'll all sort itself out. And I find out the more you worry about things and plan things, just the more you're wasting your time. It all happens somehow or other. And when you have this lack of worry, you're free from the worries about the future is another sense of freedom. Okay, this is not great freedoms yet, not profound ones, but they are valid freedoms, which you can all appreciate. Even those of you who've been monks for a long time, even those of you who are on retreat, are you really counting the days and worried about whether you're going to get somewhere or not get somewhere, worried about what happened yesterday or this morning or even 5 minutes ago? Please free yourself from time. Be liberated from all destinations. This is something which I've been talking about, the destinations. When you have no destinations, when you've got no place to go, then it's a possibility you might stop. But any of you in your meditation who has a destination, whether it's nimittas or jhanas or insight or whatever, if that's what you're aspiring for, you have a destination, be careful, you will never be able to be still. Just stop. If you have sort of a goal, you'll be moving towards that goal. The mind will be trembling, will be disturbed, and it's not stopping. So this is important, how we stop the mind, how we stop the body, and thereby we stop this samsara. And it's a crazy thing in one sense. But many people, whenever you go outside and they ask you, what's it feel like to be a monk? You don't know all these rules you have to keep, aren't they oppressive? And some even modern Buddhists, they call themselves Buddhists, they're modern pseudo-Buddhists. The word pseudo means not real. Many pseudo-Buddhists think that the best way of being a Buddhist is not to keep all these precepts, just be mindful, don't be attached to things, don't be attached to precepts, and think that's the way to freedom. But for anyone who's actually kept 5 precepts, 8 precepts, 10 precepts of a novice, or 227 precepts of a monk, for all of those of you who've lived here long enough now, it's incredible how free you feel. In fact, you feel more freedom not being able to watch TV, not being able to watch movies, not being able to watch, to listen to music, not being able to have sex, not being able to do this and do that. You feel more freedom in a monastery than probably you've ever felt before. Why? What's going on? And it became very clear to me the reason why I felt free in a monastery with all these so-called restrictions. Because it was actually restricting the prison guards, the torturers. It was restricting those things which actually stopped me being free. And what it was restricting craving and wanting and having. Just there was no way I could do anything. So those things weren't on my radar anymore. Whether it was sex, whether it was movies, I didn't even think about them. They just couldn't have them. That's it, gone. So you're free from so much turmoil, so many desires. And this is why that I wrote in even that little booklet. What freedom truly is a freedom from desires, not the freedom of desires. The two are very, very different. It's only just one small preposition. But the freedom of desires means you can have as many desires as you want. You're actually in the turmoil of desires. Just like, in the trough of a tsunami, just being taken by the currents this way and that way. And it's a waste of time trying to go with the flow. You're in the flow. You're going to be drowned eventually. But there's the freedom from desires, when you're just outside, out of the currents. And no currents aren't there anymore. You're just free from the cravings and the attachments, the forces which propel you through the endless round, the perpetual wandering. Once you understand what that is, you understand what freedom truly is. And so from the very beginning of monastic life, you start to get an understanding, a feeling, a taste of freedom. And that's one of the Buddha's favorite sayings, the taste of freedom. The Dhamma has a taste of freedom. Every Dhamma which is really worthy of the name, every truth, you can tell it's a teaching of a Buddha or the Aryans, because this taste of freedom, just like wherever you taste the ocean, it has a taste of salt. So the Dhamma has a taste of freedom, of liberation, of being released from burdens. And that's why so often when I listen to the Dhamma, it's just so inspiring. It just releases. You feel free. You feel like you're floating like a bird. And just all these things which we were worrying about, all these things you were concerned about, the things which were weighing you down, your prison cell just vanishes, it melts, the bars just disappear, and you're free. Liberation. And so all these are tastes of what freedom is. And as you develop the meditation and the insights which come from that deep meditation, you get more understanding of what freedom really is. When I teach meditation at Nolamara and other places, even the short meditations, I always ask people at the end, just before they come out of meditation, how do you feel? Especially to know any sense of peace, happiness, and I always mention this freedom business. Because at the end of every meditation, that's when you can get an understanding, an insight into freedom, into liberation, what it really means. Because at the end of a meditation, so often you're free from all these desires connected with the body. The body's comfortable at the end of a meditation, usually. It's amazing. You just sat absolutely still. You haven't scratched anything or moved anything. The body's really relaxed. This, when I meditate, that's what happens. Just feels so comfortable. And the mind is just so comfortable. You haven't been doing anything for half an hour, depends on how long you sit for. You haven't been doing anything. The body feels so relaxed, so at ease, no stress. Because you haven't been doing anything. It gives you the taste of what stopping truly is and what freedom is. And that's why I want people to understand this beginning freedom and then to take it further. Because when you get into the jhanas, you're free from this body. And that's a huge liberation. And it's the knowledge of that freedom. The knowledge of freedom which comes only in those states. If you can have knowledge of freedom, it has to be experience. On Sunday at Nolamara, I read out the Potapada Sutta in the Sutta class. That Potapada Sutta is a favorite one of most monks. It tells all about non-self, all about the jhanas. It just has this unique description of the jhanas as this Sukhama Satcha Piti Sukha. That the subtle but real sort of joy and happiness. And it's beautiful, it has the subtle there, but real. It's a different happiness that you've ever felt before. The subtle ones, but really true. And it has the other beautiful similes, but in particular, and it starts to talk about like where was I going on this? The Potapada Sutta. There was a point which I wanted to make, but it's come out when I start getting inspired by descriptions of jhanas. But that's right. Where it was asked, the Buddha was asked, does jnana, the knowledge come first or the experience first? And obviously the Buddha said the experience comes first and the knowledge comes afterwards. You have to have the experience of freedom first to understand what it truly is. And this is actually why you have to have a vimutti experience. And the jhanas, as I said last week, are the real valid vimutti experiences. Because you are free, you feel liberated, separated, free from the body and the five senses, and also from will, from the doer, the wanter, the chooser. The experience has to come first, and then you get the knowledge. Which is why it's only after vimutti, after a sense of freedom, you can get vimutti jnana, the knowledge of freedom. That's why these 9th and 10th factors are in that order. Now that might seem obvious to you, but still that many people in this world think you can just get this jnana, these insights, just by thinking about it or by inference. But you can't do it that way. You have to have experience. You have to have experience of the jhanas, those liberations. As it says in the Potapada Sutta, the experience has to come first, and then the jnana comes afterwards. The wisdom, the insight, the knowledge. So this is why that I've been just encouraging so often these jhana experiences. So, but it's still the taste of freedom, but at least you've found something there in the way into the jhanas, through the stopping of the mind, through the stillness. Stillness upon stillness upon stillness is the way into the jhanas. Stopping, stopping, stopping is the way to make that stillness happen. So don't do things. Don't force or drive your mind. Just learn just how to completely open up, let go, and turn off all the switches. So you're not doing anything at all. And in that jhana experience, you get this incredible freedom from will. Sometimes people don't understand what this will, this choosing, this doing actually is, and just how much suffering it is. You know what it's like when you have to make a choice? When you have to move and do things? It's a huge disturbance. But because people have just been doing things and choosing and willing ever since they can remember, it's so natural to us that we just take it for granted. It's like a disease we've had all our life. Like these people who are born with headaches, and then somebody comes along with some magic chemical bullet and their headaches are removed and they can feel so much bliss. This thing you have inside of yourself, just be mindful of it. Just will, choosing, doing things. This is what propels you. And a lot of times that we can't recognize it because it's too close to us, like the nose on our face. It's always been there in the background. We've taken it for granted. We can't truly understand what it really is. But in the jhanas, the will disappears. The potential to do is vanished. You're absolutely still. You can't do anything. It's only through those experiences you get the insights, the jnana, the knowledge that Chaitanya is suffering. That the will, the mind moving, is incredible pain. And you've been in this prison of pain, of having to do things, make decisions, go this way, go that way. It is a prison, but people delight in this. Some people just have got such strong wills and they delight in their strong wills, and they're into power trips, into ego trips, control freaks. That's what it means by having a strong will. And many of you have come across such people and they're pains in the neck. But they're even worse pains in their own butt. Because you know what it's like to have to choose and do things. Sometimes you get it right, sometimes you get it wrong. When you have will, there's always fear, usually about what people might say if you get it wrong. That's why a lot of lying comes from the fear generated with will, trying to hide things, not really tell people what's really going on. And just a whole lot of suffering comes from willing and doing things and choosing and making things. And people say, well, you've got to do this, there's so much to do in this world. Leave it for other people to do all that sort of stuff. You want to stop. You know, unless you have to do something, just stop, don't do anything. So in other words, stop the will. But as I mentioned last week, that sometimes you feel like you're dying. What's the point? That you won't exist without doing things, and that is the whole point. That, you know, to actually to give up, to let go, to have freedom. It's not just freedom of will, but freedom of being, or rather freedom from being. We have what the Buddha said, this craving, the second type of the three cravings, bhava danha, the craving to be. And unless you see that as suffering as well, that is essentially a problem, then you won't know what freedom truly is. So many people think that freedom is just to be. Freedom is to do. They have no knowledge of what real freedom is. And that's why they'll have this perpetual wandering. Always going somewhere, doing some things, being this and being that. And one lifetime being a girl, another one being a boy, and this one being a monk or being a lay person, being rich, being poor. There's all these beings, these roles which we play from time to time. And it's great not to be, to disappear. Even in a monastery, that sometimes people always want to be, they have their persona, which you can actually see them playing out at tea times or coffee clubs. But the ones which I really sort of am intrigued by are the ones who disappear, the silent ones, the ones who've got no persona, who've almost like vanishing, the invisible, not man, the invisible monk. They're the ones I'm really intrigued by, because they're the ones who I think are just on the path and maybe very close. It's the invisible ones, the ones you don't know about, they're the ones who usually get the best meditation. I just was talking to someone recently about Sumana, the novice. Now this might be our Sumana, the novice, but this was actually Sumana, the novice in the time of the Buddha, who was just a very small boy. And you know this story, it's one of my favourite stories. He'd just beaten this big naga, this dragon, in this lake in the Himalayas to get some water for the Buddha. Now this was this great psychic battle. He was an arahat, this 7-year-old novice with full psychic powers, this incredible super novice. And when he went on alms round, the monks would knock him on the head or tweak his ears. Just because he's a little novice, they thought he was just a stupid little guy. And that's when the Buddha had to get all the monks together and tell them, listen, do not tweak that little novice's ears. You don't know what you're playing with. Now that guy, little novice, only 7-year-old, a little guy, he's just fought this incredible battle with this powerful dragon in the mountains. He's a Superman. But he's just not sort of, he's not reacting to you, but he could just make mincemeat out of you. So, what it was actually showing, that was a real Aryan, a real noble one. No one knew just how powerful this little novice was and how enlightened he was. He disappeared. That's actually how sometimes we know about how people are going on their path. Their ego just vanishes, they disappear, they can just melt into the background. And no one knows. They are free. So you can see this being free from being free from doing things. This gives you the taste. And the more you do those deep meditations, the more you understand the taste of what freedom truly is. You know it. Until you can understand the sort of the real freedom of Nibbana. And as I mentioned last week, that's the first almost stage of Vimukti, the stream winner. You've actually seen what's really going on here. What samsara truly is, and what the end of samsara is. This is really what the Four Noble Truths mean. The first Noble Truth is samsara. Second Noble Truth, the cause of samsara. Third Noble Truth, the end of samsara. And the fourth Noble Truth, the way to the end of samsara. Samsara is just this always doing things, going somewhere, this beingness. That's what samsara, the constant wandering, always somewhere to go, something to do, something more is required of you. And why is that samsara? What's the cause of samsara? It's just this craving of doing something, this will, plus just being. Just the whole idea of being is to move. I think I mentioned that last week. You can tell, or the acid test where something is alive is whether it does something, whether it responds, whether it reacts. You poke it, you put a light in its pupil to see if the pupils dilate or something, to see whether there's any life left in there. You see whether their heart is beating, if there's a pulse, there's a movement there. If there's no movement, there's nothing doing anything, we call it death. That's why doing is just so close to being. And stopping is so close to death. That's why that the idea of Nibbana is very close to a death. It's not doing anymore. It's death of life as we know it. as you know it, as you think it is. The death of all of that. That's why people are scared when you talk about freedom. They'd rather be in jail. Just like those old prisoners who've been in jail for so many years. They don't want to get paroled because they don't know how they could stand it outside. They've been used to the prison. They've been institutionalized. Just like human beings. They've been institutionalized in samsara. So much so that they're afraid of getting out. They don't know what to do in Nibbana. They'd rather just suffer in samsara. It's one of the big problems. So the jhanas give you the taste of freedom. Enough to give you the incentive, the knowledge to be able to get out. And soon enough you get this first real knowledge of freedom. The insight knowledge of the end of samsara, the stream winner. As you can see what the problem was. And you can see especially that second noble truth, the cause of samsara. What keeps samsara going? And you can actually see it's that craving, that will, and the dependent origination. This is what one sees at stream winning. Fully, one can actually see just why this is a path, the force which gives rise to rebirth, which keeps the cycle of samsara rolling life after life after life after life after life. And see that. This is the sankhara, the karma formations which give rise to the new consciousness in the next life. That's the second factor of dependent origination. Plus the craving which gives rise to the fuel, the upadana for bhava and jati, for being and rebirth. You can actually see how this actually works. You can understand why the Buddha taught the dependent origination. The cause for rebirth. What keeps samsara going? What keeps you moving? Why you can't stop? This is actually where you see the force behind all movement. And once you see that force behind all movement of the mind, all movement of evolution, all movement of anything, once you see what that force is by your deep meditations, then you know by stopping that force, by cutting it off, by drying it out, then the fires of craving can't take light. I have this beautiful description of the Buddha about rebirth, which I don't think I've ever heard anybody talk about. It's called like the stations of consciousness. Stations of consciousness is where consciousness can take root in a future life, which we build through our craving, through our wanting. As if we make our worlds, we create them. We create the stations, the ground in which consciousness can actually grow and take root and form a life for the future. It's interesting to notice what those are. It's all your craving, all your hopes, all your destinations. Those are called stations of consciousness. You create them, you build them, and you can create anything. That's why there are like these heaven realms of the 33. It's only created by those gods. When they all die, it can disappear. They got the heaven of the playful devas. You can understand they create their realm. You have the hell realms, the various hell realms. You create those realms. It's incredible when you get deeper into your meditation to see how much we create, even of this world. How, in a sense which is more true than you can understand, that each one of us is in our own universe. Sure, we're on planet Earth, and sure we can see this, Perth, we're in Bodhinyana Monastery, sure we're in the same place. Sure, I didn't create this, it was built by these builders and that builder. No, you're creating most of it. Sometimes we think that we live in a created world, but we create 99% of it. When you actually see just how much you create, how much you do, how much you make, it sort of scares you. And then you can actually see, once you see this force of creation within you, the craving, karma formations, the will, the chaitana, the movement, the chanda, this desire. Once you see that in the stream winner, you know how to cut it off. You see its stupidity, that it promises you happiness. You do things because you think it's going to be better. You go somewhere because you think it's useful. You will because you think that that's going to make everyone happier. And we have the best intentions, but always create problems. We create the problem of more life, more suffering. Like human beings, you see all these great things which we try and do for others, all these wonderful aid agencies, and even people in politics, they go into politics, with these wonderful intentions. They really want to help and do something in the world. They're very noble-minded usually when they start. But it all goes wrong. By nature it has to. Its will, its chaitana, leads to suffering. Sooner or later that we realize that we can stop that. Stop being reborn. Stop. To understand what that means, it means that you die. It means that the whole movement of the mind stops once and for all. Everything finishes, ends, ceases. To be able to see that is incredibly hard, because it's something we don't want to see. The end of self, the end of me. However, that becomes so clear in that state of stream winning that you cannot avoid it, whether you like it or not. That's the truth, that's the way things are. No one in here, the will, the choice is just a process. All the consciousnesses are just a process. Even knowing is just an empty process. There's nothing there. It's fully empty, no core. Because there's no core, fully empty, no essence. It's come from nothing. It's nothing now. It can end in nothing. That's actually why Nirodha, Nibbana is possible, why cessation and the snuffing out of the flame is possible. As we chanted in that beautiful Ratana Sutta, Kina Bija Virohi Chanda, Nibanti Dira Yatayang Padipo. This seed has been destroyed. This is what a stream winner sees. Or rather, they haven't seen it yet, so they've seen what the seed is. The Arahat sees the seed has been destroyed. What is that seed? Is that craving? That wanting? That moving of the mind? Based on the illusion of there's something in here. That whole force has been seen as a seed. That this desire, which is part of that seed, can no longer grow. This mind is freed from future existence. Avirata chitayati kebhavasmin. From future being, the mind is freed. And it's going to cease just like a flame. Nibanti dira yatayang padipo. Just like this lamp, it's going to go out. And as the Buddha kept on saying, it doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't go east, west, north, south, or to any ground of all flames. It just ceases, that's all. Stops. It's called stopping. No destination. The mind has stopped. This is actually what freedom is. As one develops from that insight, that knowledge, that seeing of what the end of the path is. One also knows the way. That's why the jhana and nibbana, they go together. The jhana is just the means, but it's just the route tells you what nibbana is. The insights go all the way. Once you understand what stopping is, you try it, you do it, you get the experience, the insight comes, the wisdom comes, more and more wisdom until the penny drops. The stopping in the jhana is the stopping of samsara. Little by little you're stopping it, you're letting go of the world. Little by little you are also disappearing. The world and you, pretty much the same. When the world stops, you stop. When the objects of consciousness cease, the consciousness also has to cease. They're interdependent. So there cannot be any knowing left when everything stops. Sooner or later, just the thing which you saw at a stream winner, it just takes over. It just takes over like this light just coming into the house, illuminating every corner. Until soon there's no place in that house called your mind which isn't illuminated just by that Dhamma of freedom. And so at that point when you see there's nothing left for a station of consciousness, the consciousness has got no place to go. That's why it's at that point one knows one is arahat, fully enlightened. This is the knowledge of the full vimutti. It's as if you see there's a bird using that understanding of the word alaya, the roosting. The word alaya is another word which is often translated as attachments. Analaya is one of the descriptions of freedom, cause for the ending of samsara. What that really means is using a metaphor of like the birds flying up in the sky, but they've got no place to roost. No branches, no ledges, no mountain peaks, nothing which they fly in the air, and even the earth has disappeared. They've got no place to land. This is what it really means, like having no roosting. This is what it means, having no station of consciousness for the future. The consciousness doesn't have any place to land anymore. Sure, the seed has got no ground, no earth where it can land and germinate. The whole causal structure for future rebirth has been destroyed. This is where one sees there's no place where your consciousness can land. That's where one knows that this consciousness will continue according to its cause and effect for this lifetime. But you know, when this body dies and the five senses dissipate, they just dissipate, that's all. Just like the flame gone out. And there's no way that mind, that stream of consciousness, can actually find another birth. There's no place where it can grab onto anymore. There's no rungs on the ladder left. There's no branches on the tree. There's no perches. Nothing where it can land. It's the end of things. Samsara will stop for you. Sometimes people think that's so scary, like a spiritual suicide. That's because they go too far, too quickly. That's why I started this talk on just simple things of freedom, and took it further and further, so we get the knowledge of the freedoms. And that knowledge of the freedom builds stage by stage. Builds through just keeping precepts, being a good person, feeling more and more free when you keep a virtuous lifestyle, feeling more and more free when you meditate, feeling more and more free when you guard your senses. And it surprises you. Why is this freedom? When in the world people think that this is some sort of prison, being in a monastery. Those of you who are just here for a few days, spending your holidays in a monastery, you must be crazy. Why can't you go out and enjoy yourselves and be free? And you say, mate, Why don't you come in this monastery and enjoy yourself and be even more free? And they just can't understand that, but that's the truth of it. You understand little by little what freedom is. And as that insight grows and matures, as the pieces of the jigsaw puzzle come together, you actually see that this is the real freedom. The samma vimutti. And every time you experience a little bit of real freedom, afterwards you'll get the understanding, the knowledge of real freedom, the samma vimutti jnana. The stream winner of the jhanas, you get a deep understanding. This is freedom from the body, freedom from doing. You're almost there. At the stream winning, you get the freedom knowing exactly what that freedom is, the full picture. And then it's only a matter of time before it does its job like a antibiotic injected into the body, the virus of craving and attachment, stupidity, is soon to be overwhelmed by the antibiotic of Dhamma. And soon the disease is gone. Once the disease is gone, this is what the knowledge of freedom truly is. It's seeing the seed as being destroyed. Seeing the whole causal process and knowing that causal process has been completely broken. That's why the Arahat can actually say, destroyed is birth. Done is what's needed to be done. There is no more of this. Bhava Nirodha, the end of existence. That's what the stream winner, the Arahat, can do with delight. Sometimes people think that you may be more miserable when you think you're going to end. But that's not as it is. As the Buddha actually said again from the Potapada Sutta, you should not think that way. He's actually talking to Chitta, son of the elephant trainer. He said, just as these things disappear more and more, there's greater and greater happiness and delight. The closer one gets to freedom, the more and more happiness and delight one should experience. And so this is how you can actually tell who the free ones are. The more happy they are, the more joyful they are, really happy, really joyful in all situations, then you know they're close to freedom. That's a sign. And then you can understand what an arahat is. Someone who's seen the seed for rebirth, the cause which will make them go to a new birth, the force which propels their stream of consciousness on that gap from life to life, that has been fully destroyed. It's been overcome through wisdom, through practice. Now there's no possibility of any rebirth. And they are blissed out. Full energy, full compassion, to help and share with others their insights, their freedoms, to try and encourage others to also go on that path, to real freedom, to true freedom. The real goal of life is freedom. And those are the people who have found it. Those are the people who know that this is their last life. The end is going to come. When they get to that Nibbana, it's a full release. The Parinibbana, Awasesa Parinibbana, the Parinibbana with nothing remaining. True freedom. And the knowledge of that freedom comes through the experience of Arahat, and lasts all their life, until the last moment, when what was just causally produced, and what was just suffering arising and suffering passing away, what most people thought was delightful and needed to be cherished, even thought it was sacred, now that just comes out one last time and passes away one last time with nothing remaining. The end. Nibbanang paramang sukhang, said the Buddha. Such Nibbana is the ultimate happiness. For those who haven't experienced jhana, that doesn't make any sense. It's like some Zen koan. How can such non-existence, as you know it, be the ultimate happiness? Same way why people say, why are monks happy when they can't enjoy what other people enjoy? Once you get in there and you try it out, it changes the whole way you look at things. Once you get into jhana, it changes the whole way you look at life. Once you become a stream winner, it changes your whole motivations. Once you're an arahat, your motivations are terminally ill, they're mostly gone. That's why the Buddha, when he became a Buddha, we mentioned this I think over in Malaysia, I think you know this as well, I've mentioned this here. When a Buddha attained complete enlightenment, he just couldn't do anything. Stood just looking at the Bodhi tree for 7 days without blinking. So the story says. Sounds impossible. But if you get into jhanas, if you get any insights, the deeper the insights, the more you know that's probably true. And why he couldn't even teach unless Brahma Sahampati, a non-returner, a previous sub-brahmacharya from the time of Kassapa the Buddha, one of his old mates from the previous time he was a monk with the previous Buddha, came to see Siddhartha Gautama and asked him, please teach. It's all that's needed to get the motivation to stop the stopping. After such an experience of full enlightenment, the Buddha would be so stopped, so absolutely still, nothing to get it going. That's why he just needed that little spark from Brahma Sahampati to get the whole thing, which we now know as the Dhamma of our modern age, going. Stopping is the key. Stopping is the end. Stopping all stations of consciousness. Stopping being. Stopping the will. Try it. See what happens. That's the last talk in this series.
Supatipano Bhagavato Sāvaka Sangho Sangham